This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On Air.
The Science Notes podcast on OAR FM Dunedin, brought to you by the Division of Sciences at the University of Otago. I'm Dave McMorrin. Over the next half hour, I'll be chatting with a graduate science student about their research, their passion for science, and the things that fuel their creativity. Well, hello there and welcome to another episode of Science Notes. My name's Dave McMorrin and this week our guest is Claudia Hird. Hi, Claudia.
Hello, how's it going?
Well, thank you for coming along to talk to us today. Claudia is doing a PhD in marine science.
Yes.
Although from the notes that she sent me, it doesn't seem to be as marine as some we've had, but that's all right. We'll get into that. Before we get into the nuts and bolts of geothermal microbiomes, how is it that you find yourself doing a PhD in marine science at Otago?
Oh, well, it's been a long road. The reason why I'm in marine science department is because of my supervisor.
Right.
And she's a professor now in the marine science department. And I just kind of came across her on my paper trail and on my way to find a PhD.
Yeah.
And I emailed her one day and I was like, hey, do you have any projects? You seem really cool. And she offered me this one, which has very limited amount to do with marine science.
Yes.
So that's how I got to where I am today.
So you're from Australia, I'm guessing, originally?
I am, yes. I moved here about 7 months ago.
Right. And so you've done you did a degree and stuff over in Australia somewhere?
Yes. I did a undergrad double degree at RMIT in Melbourne.
Right.
And that was in environmental science and social science. And then I kind of fell in love with the idea of Antarctica. I think back in second year of my undergrad degree, I read a paper about ice cores, and I thought that was just so awesome. You could see the past climate and just paleo climates and everything paleo in these ice cores, and I just thought that was really wicked, and I wanted to do that one day. So I was about to take a gap year after my undergrad degree in 2020, but life had other plans.
Everyone took a gap year.
Yes. And so I was going to go traveling around in 2020, but COVID said no. And so I decided to enroll in my master's degree in Hobart. So I did a master's in marine and Antarctic science there.
Strong school in environmental science down in Tasmania.
Yes, it was amazing. So many cool field experiences and lab experiences and great bunch of people as well. So had a really great time there.
And now you're here.
I am, yes.
And despite, I'm sure there's lots of people who, when they're growing up, think they want to be a marine biologist because they want to study dolphins and stuff. Yeah. This is not you.
No.
So tell us, what is it that you are doing?
What am I doing? I am looking at the microbiomes of things that live around geothermal hotspots. So I am comparing these creatures to their non-geothermal conspecifics. So I will be looking at 2 geothermal areas in the North Island and 2 non-geothermal areas to compare the microbiomes found in each place, and hopefully we'll see a difference in the microbiomes because things are released from the vents in geothermal hotspots like sulfur, and sulfur has been traditionally used to get rid of parasites in chickens. Mm-hmm. So we're thinking along those lines. So my supervisor went to Deception Island in Antarctica in 2017, I believe. Don't quote me on that. And she saw these penguins just hanging around the geothermal areas in Deception Island. And she was like, that's so weird. They're cold adapted species. So why are they on the hot, warm ground here?
They shouldn't need hot balls.
No. No. So she brought that idea back to Dunedin, and she created this project, kind of creating it together, I guess. But we're looking at the birds mainly in Rotorua and Taupō and seeing if there are less parasites and if their microbiomes differ to other places. And hopefully we could compare that to some Antarctic samples and some Icelandic samples, but hopefully...
Which you may or may not collect yourself.
Yes. It's all a bit up in the air at the moment, but hopefully we'll get
there. For me,
there.
I think it'd be a debate. Is it Antarctica or is it Iceland? Iceland's a lot easier to go to in some ways.
Yes.
Antarctica is Antarctica.
Yes, I think both have their challenges. But right now I'm in discussions with the Brazilian Antarctic program.
Right.
Because they have a base there in the Antarctic Peninsula, and they'll be quite easy to get to.
Right.
And so hopefully that all goes swimmingly, but I suspect there will be issues arising, especially with the bird flu rising in Antarctica. We'll probably not collect the samples from the birds there, but hopefully some plant and maybe microinvertebrate samples.
So you're interested in the microbiome. Microbiome is a word that is kind of floats around in the public sphere quite a lot now. For you, as a marine scientist, what is the microbiome?
It's when all the microbes create an environment on a surface. It could be internal or external, but it's the community of microbes in a certain area. Right.
So internal is kind of the context in which you hear this word now, isn't it? It's the microbiome in your stomach. It's all the little bugs and stuff.
Yeah.
Which quite recently have been discovered to actually be quite important. It's quite a new thing, isn't it?
Yes. I think people are getting on the health train and they're like, I got to make my gut flora healthy.
Yes, gut flora. This is another phrase, isn't it? Along with the slightly disturbing word transfusion that apparently is a thing.
I've actually
you've not heard this?
No.
Where if you need to, if your microbiome is no good, you can get a transplant from someone else.
Is that right?
Yes.
Oh God. Okay.
The things that we can do.
Yep.
So then and the reason why the microbiome is important is because it does actually have all these until recently unknown impacts upon the health of the organisms that live nearby.
Yeah.
Or that in which the microbiome live within. So it's important for preventing disease and immunity and that sort of stuff.
Yes. Sometimes the microbes can be non-beneficial, and sometimes they can be beneficial, and sometimes they can just be a neutral relationship.
They're just there.
Yes. Sorry, what was the question?
So the interest in the microbiome is because it has this impact on the health of the host species or the species that live around.
Yes. So we want to see how the microbiomes differ and if there are parasites within the microbiomes that can either be internally or externally. But right now we are looking externally.
Yeah.
But basically we can see how their health differs, and that's really cool.
So how do you then audit the microbiome of a bird in Rotorua?
That is still yet to be found in my research. There's a lot to consider in this project, and I think I'm still just getting my head around everything.
So is it something that you could potentially do under a microscope, or is it a DNA analysis type thing? Or?
It's a DNA analysis,
right.
So actually RNA analysis. So we'll be, right now the plan is to use 16S RNA sampling or analysis. Before we were aiming to do metagenomics, and I did a course recently and I discovered that we actually don't need metagenomic data for this. It just would be too much detail And we don't need that much detail, and metagenomics costs a lot of money, and 16S costs way less money.
Right. So this then gives you a way to work out the types of microbe that are there without getting into the whole, is this microbe genetically related to another microbe?
Yeah, exactly.
So, is this something that you could do? I've had some people on previously talking about eDNA as well. Is this something that would be of use to you? Or
possibly. That is actually one of the things that inspired me to do this kind of work. It was one of the paper trails I went down when trying to find a PhD. So possibly.
Because eDNA is a big thing. I mean, I don't know. It's probably a big thing everywhere, but it's certainly a big thing in certain parts of Otago.
Yes.
As well.
Yeah, I think right now I want to look at everything.
Yeah.
And I have to sort of refine my goals for this project.
Yeah. It's hard when you're the first one kind of doing it, isn't it? Because you don't really know what's going to work and what's not.
Exactly. So. And there's not much data out there about biotic microbiomes in geothermal areas.
There's no recipes to follow.
No. So you kind of just have to consider everything and then filter down to what you actually need.
Yeah.
And what you can afford and what is actually logistically possible.
In 3 years.
Yes.
Because of that too.
Yes.
So you're looking at birds.
Yep.
What sorts of birds?
Right now we are aiming to look at the black-billed gull, the black-backed gull, and the red-billed gull.
Right. And so they're good because you'll find them everywhere.
Yes.
Even though there really shouldn't be any of those in Taupo because it's a very long way from the ocean.
It is.
They're everywhere. So,
they are. Yes.
And so the idea is you study some birds there.
Yep.
And then study some from out on the coast somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
And then see so you're looking for a difference in the microbiome and all the little things that are living on their skin, and then trying to correlate that with a difference in their healthiness.
Yeah, so we can see which microbes from previous data are actually healthy, quote unquote.
Right.
So we can see, we will get the data back and we'll look at what's actually present, and then we'll go down the list and see if they would actually be beneficial or neutral or not so beneficial.
Right. So it's a matter of once you have a list of all of the things that are present, go, okay, well, I know that sort of microbe tends to give the seagulls constipation.
Yeah, exactly.
And I find this more in the ones that are on the coast compared to the ones that are near these geothermal areas.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. And hopefully we'll also be looking at fish and vegetation and invertebrates. But
proper marine science, right?
Yes, exactly. But surprisingly, or not, there aren't many fish in geothermal areas because it's too hot and too acidic, and they just don't like it. But hopefully we will find some mosquito fish and some goldfish in the areas that we're looking at. We'll see.
Would the same issues for finding fish apply if you were looking at geothermal vents in the ocean?
Possibly.
Because, I mean, from what little I know about those, I know that there's lots and lots of life that lives around these, what are they, black smokers or whatever they're called, these like baby volcanoes in the ocean.
Yeah.
And in fact, when I started reading the notes you sent me, I thought this is what you must be talking about because you're a marine scientist.
That's what most people think initially, and then I have to explain, no, not actually doing much marine science.
But that would be potentially something where this work could go as well then, to see, compare the fish who lived around, assuming there were fish, lived around these areas to fish just out in the...
Yeah, I believe other invertebrates would be living in the black smokers rather than fish per se.
I feel like I've seen pictures of crabs and lobstery type things and stuff.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a road that I want to take in the future after my PhD.
Yeah.
I don't think there's enough scope in my PhD right now to look at that stuff, unfortunately. But yeah, it's very cool. And we can also compare this stuff to other planets and sort of see, possibly, astrobiologically speaking, if there are similarities in the environments and possibly therefore
Yep.
producing some life that's not necessarily how we think life should be.
Yep.
Yes.
But that's a more complicated field trip than Antarctica even.
It definitely is,
Yeah.
yes. As I said, I need to refine my goals. Yes, that's definitely like 20 years down the track.
Yeah.
But why not think about it now?
Assuming that you can swing getting down to the Brazilian station in Antarctica, you said rather than looking at birds, you must kind of look at plants. What's the difference in terms of what you're looking at with plants compared to seagulls?
I feel like there would be a semi-large difference. Like we're not really comparing the birds to the vegetation. We're comparing the vegetation in Antarctica to the vegetation.
But in terms of what you're looking for in those differences?
I'm actually not sure yet what we'll actually find. I believe that some vegetation could be, I don't know, maybe not healthier, but affected by geothermal hotspots compared to non-geothermal hotspots. We're not sure if it would be beneficial for the vegetation and non-beneficial for the birds, or beneficial for the birds and not beneficial for the vegetation.
Yeah.
Just different.
Yeah, because I mean, you know, you might naively think plants in an environment like Antarctica, if there are areas that are warmer, the plants will want to be there because it's warmer.
Yeah.
But if the plants are there at all, it's probably because they don't mind being cold.
Yeah.
So there might be these other benefits. I mean, like you say with the penguins, I mean, the penguins don't mind being cold. So there may be some other reason why they're near these warmer areas.
Yeah. And that leads back to the compounds that are released from these areas. And yeah, I just think that's really cool.
Yeah. And of course, all of this has, I suppose, from an Antarctic point of view, at least some relationship to the fact that it's probably getting warmer down there.
Yes.
And so any temperature-related effects on the health of the wildlife down there are going to be things which are going to be important to understand.
Yeah, definitely. That's something to consider. I think that... sorry, brain block. That geothermal hotspots, we haven't looked at them a lot, and where there's still a lot to learn. And because of climate change, things will change, and we don't know how geothermal hotspots will change with climate change. And so it's this big convoluted web of stories and impacts and aspects to look at. So, yeah, hopefully this can contribute something.
It's interesting you say that there's been very little research done on this. Is that because it's just hard to do it in these areas, or because the whole microbiome thing is still relatively new as a concept? Or
Maybe both. It's quite difficult to look at things in geothermal hotspots because of the danger and the locations. You have to be quite aware of the dangers that are around there. But also it's quite difficult to look at if things are actually there. And people in the past thought that nothing could really survive geothermal areas because of the low pH and the high temperature, and nothing would actually want to live there. But actually things do live there. They're just different to what we think they should live like.
Yeah. Like the whole methanogen type thing. The microbes that live on methane rather than oxygen.
Exactly, yeah.
And they just found a different way to go.
Yeah. I think that's definitely a path we have to look at in the future. I personally believe, hot take, that we should open our minds a little bit to seeing how different organisms can live rather than just living off oxygen and all the normal quote-unquote things that organisms are supposed to live off, like methane-loving organisms live off methane, and that's like, what if other things can live off other things?
Yeah, and if you can find such things that live off methane, I mean, these things convert methane into, I'm going to guess CO2, but I can't actually remember. But if you can find microbes that can actually do interesting, weird chemistry, then that can be useful for things like removing methane if it's a pollutant or, So understanding how these things operate is there's more to it than just a potential benefit to the seagulls or eventually us.
Exactly. I actually spoke to someone last week and they were looking at plastic degradation in these areas. And I thought that was really cool.
Yep.
Like we could use these organisms and sort of culture them in the future to manage our plastic waste.
To eat plastic.
Yeah.
If you can find them that live on methane, plastics are not that, chemically speaking, not that a million miles away from that.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So lots of things to think about.
And lots of things to study.
Yes.
Yeah. So you've only just started. Mm-hmm. You've got another 2.5 years or so to go yet.
Yep.
Lots to do. And the plan is so you haven't been out collecting data yet?
I went on a little scoping field trip to Rotorua and I definitely saw the gulls and other types of birds and other little mayflies and little macroinvertebrates living in the geothermal areas. So that was a good sign.
Yep.
Because when I first started, I was like, oh, this could be really cool or really just not show anything at all. But yeah, I suspect that we will see something.
Yep.
I'm not too sure yet.
You've got a plan for how to catch a seagull?
Yes, that has been my life for the past, 3 months, trying to figure out all these bird catches and,
So that's going to be a big part of you for the next couple of years.
Yes.
Is collecting samples and doing the analysis. I think you said, I think in an email, that you've just been for a week doing a stats course or something to help you with the data analysis you're going to have to do.
Yep. Yeah, I was at a metagenomics course.
Sorry, metagenomics.
Yeah,
what's metagenomics?
And that taught me a lot, and it was really cool to see how I could play around with genes and coding and DNA and RNA. And
it's a very fast-moving field, isn't it?
It is. It's
always new things to learn.
Yes, yeah. It's developed a lot. Yeah.
And often I would say at the end, what next for you? But it's probably a bit early to say that. You've got much to do yet before you finish your PhD. But is this something that you want to keep in, do you think?
Yeah, I definitely see myself going down this road in the future and opening it up to hydrothermal areas. Never would have expected to do this when I enrolled in my undergrad degree.
Yep.
I was in high school. I was like, I like geography and I like chemistry. I wasn't quite much of a biology kid.
No.
So I was like, but chemistry and geography, I was like, yeah, what can I do with that?
Yep.
Environmental science, so I'll put that number 3, see what happens. And now...
And here you are.
I'm here.
Here you are, doing cutting-edge things that no one's done before.
Yeah, yes, yep.
Wonderful.
Maybe for a reason, maybe not.
I wasn't going to say that.
Yeah, but hopefully it will produce some really cool data.
Cool.
And yeah, that will open up a lot of doors for future research.
Great. Well, thank you for coming along and telling us about it. Okay, thanks for listening, everyone. You've been listening to the Science Notes podcast, brought to you by the Division of Sciences at the University of Otago. To listen again, or to find other episodes in this series, go to Otago Access Radio's website, oar.org.nz, or to your favourite podcast platform.
This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On the Air.